This is going to be part 2, lecture 2 for week 13. You see week 13 on your screen, and when you're looking at it later, it's not going to look exactly like this because the links that I have written about on the side, those are notes for myself. It's really the only way I can track my work easily. So it's going to look a little bit cleaner by the time you're looking at it. But where I am in here will be the same, which is we're going to take a look now at APA common mistakes. This video was made based upon questions that I have received during week 12. It's also based on my knowledge from teaching APA in the past and knowing what common errors are. The reason I'm mentioning that at the front end of the video is there's a note over here that I want to talk about, and I might add to the common errors lesson with bonus material on this. What I mean is by bonus material is extra help. Like I might push out an extra short video after I've graded journal number 5. Journal number 5 is the one that was just the first annotation that was due during week number 12. So basically, I have to post this video that you're watching now before I've had a chance to grade. And so I will grade those journals, and then the things that I spot, if I need to make an extra short video, I'll pop it in here and I'll announce it. For now, I can tell you that based on information I've taught in the past, I can, with some reasonable amount of accuracy, go over APA common errors. So you're going to get something like this. I always want you to open it as a Google Doc because you'll get a better display and the formatting will show correctly. And you could also make your own copy, of course, take notes in it, highlight, leave yourself comments of things that you want to notice. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is it's a lot of rules. I know that, and that's why I put this up here at the top. It's not the easiest thing. It's one of the reasons why I kept the annotations so short for you. It's hard to follow the rules. You can do it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start with at the top is examples of correct in-text citations using one author. Our author's last name is Venes, V-E-N-E-S. One thing you're going to notice is you don't see a lot of squiggles here because it's going to get flagged as a misspelled word. Add it to the dictionary when you're doing names. That's a tip I have for you, because then if you typo on a name later on, you'll actually be able to catch it if you add it to the dictionary. And you're also going to produce a much cleaner document because you don't have squiggles all over the place to look at in addition to all these other things. So here there are 3 different ways of citing this passage from Venice. What I'd like you to do right now is pause the video and read these 3 to yourself. Okay, I'm going to assume that you did the pause and that you read the 3 different examples I have bulleted with Venice. And what I want you to notice right here, what you should notice, the author's name and the year are always going to stay together. If the author's name's in the sentence, you always put the year right after it, like in this example here with Smith. And if you don't, you put the author's name and the year at the end of the sentence, as in this example right here. So if it's in the sentence, it looks like this. If it's at the end of the sentence, it looks like this. The writer does not refer to the article, title, or book title in any of these example sentences up here, but it's always just the author's last name when discussing the information. And of course, that author's last name has a year. Quotation marks never start a sentence in any of these examples. You should always lead into a quote with your own words. And there's no quote sitting around by itself. That's what's called a dangling quote. It's probably the most common error that I see in student writing. I've talked about it before in our class. A dangling quote would be if you had this sitting by itself as a sentence where I've highlighted it in blue and it just said the types of influenza doctors must prepare for fall into 3, must prepare. That's a weird sentence. Prepare for fall. Oh, so influenza, it's a weird one, right? The types of influenza doctors must prepare for fall into 3 categories. It's an awkward sentence. Hey, I didn't write it. I actually copied this from materials I have. Okay, anyway, doesn't matter for the video. What matters is you won't have it sitting by itself. It has something leading up to it right here. Venice, 2001, stated that. and then there is the rest of it. That's the quoted material. We're going to talk a little bit more about quoting material further along in the document. I thought I would begin with something that you should go and scan for when you're proofreading within your annotations, and later on in your proposal, you'll be writing out sentences and you'll have references like you have here. The next part of this document covers examples of correct in-text citations using more than one author. I did it with examples of 2 authors, 3 to 5 authors, and 6 or more as you go down through. I tried to make this as easy as possible to read by setting it up with incorrect and correct examples. The first thing is that when you have 2 authors, the parentheses go at the end of the sentence with the last names separated by the ampersand. This is your ampersand right here. So here's your incorrect examples if you spell out the word and. Correct is if you do it like this. But what if their names are in the sentence? If their names are in the sentence, you're going to have your signal phrase. Your signal phrase is what prevents that dangling quote. And it would work like this. Here's a correct example. Reports by Smith and Doe state that, and then you've got the year there. Incorrect would be to put your ampersand inside your sentence. The ampersand is only going to be in parentheses. As you scroll down here, you can take a look at how these types of usages happen with 3 to 5 authors when you refer to them in parentheses versus 6 or more down here. The first time you use a reference, you will write it out, and after that you use the et al like this. Some of you may not ever, in our particular assignment, ever get past referring to something once. So this might not even happen to you. You might not refer to something more than one time in your document at all. So disregard this if you don't. I'm going to use this same document repeatedly as we're moving through the project. So what I can tell you is right now during week 13, this may not apply to you, but then when you do your proposal later on, you might need this information. So I will refer to the APA common errors when we're going through our revision during the last week of working on this particular assignment. For 6 or more authors, you're using the first author's last name, and then it'll get et al. Common error alert right here is that the period goes after all, not the et. This is something I did cover earlier, but et is Latin for and all stands for all the rest. So it's actually an abbreviation, but the word et is not. So all is the one that gets the period. I thought you might want to see what basic citation styles look like at a glance. So I copied and pasted this table in here so that you could see what it looks like. I think it's very helpful to see it in a table form. I'd recommend maybe you pause the video here and just take a look at this before I move on. Here are some of the most common errors with in-text citations. I do repeat here the information I just talked about with the ampersands. Spelling problems happen a lot. So I showed you here, if you use the spell checker, it's going to flag things for you. Sometimes students use the wrong order of multiple citations in a sentence. Now, instead of reading the whole thing to you, which makes the video long, I'm going to ask you to pause on these different sections in here and just read through the document. One of the things I'll mention this here. I add my own last name to the dictionary because it's going to flag it as a misspelled word every time. And I thought that you might want to do that with your own name if you haven't already. One of the things that I always recommend is going through what I call the squiggles in a document. When you see things that are marked as incorrect, right-click your way through a document and fix them. So if I were to do that here, well, it's going to pop up here because I have Grammarly going, and I would just fix it. If you're in Microsoft Word, you'd right-click, and if you don't have Grammarly, I think it's a right-click as well. All right, so what happens if you don't have an author and a date? You use a shortened version of the title and you use ND. I've actually covered that in one of the videos earlier in this particular week. The next part of this document is going to go into more detail in quoting and page numbers. This to me is not the easiest thing to do. I think a lot of students have a very, very, very hard time with incorporating quotes in a sentence. Anytime you're paraphrasing or quoting, you have to have a page number in APA. In this green section right here, it's the same passage from Palladino and Wade, 2010, done 5 different ways. I do want you to pause and read through that a few times so that you can see what's going on in these sentences and how it changes sentence to sentence with how Palladino and Wade in 2010 appear in the sentences, how those are in different places in these sentences, what the page number looks like in the sentences, where the quotation marks go, where you see commas in the sentence. So pause and look at those things very carefully. Here's what I think you should notice. In examples 1 and 3, the letter A right here is capitalized and put in brackets. And the reason it appears that way is it's a writing rule when you're putting a complete sentence into your own sentence that you have to capitalize the first letter of the complete sentence. Well, if the original quote didn't have it as a capital letter, you have to make it a capital letter in your paper. So that's when you put something in brackets. My guess is you've all seen this before when you're reading. You see something in brackets, but you don't really necessarily know why. It's showing that the writer changed something in the original. And so in this case, you would have to change that to a capital letter A. And because you make that change, you throw it in brackets. You also should notice that each time you have a page number, when you see the letter P, it's a lowercase p and there's a period. I should say after it. Let me correct that real quick. Period after. Oops. So it's a little p with a period after it. It's not PG. It's not PG. It's not PG. And it's not page. So it's not all these different variations of PG. It's the letter lowercase p with a period. And there's a space after each comma and period, like you see here. And I'm wondering, do you ever wonder why sometimes you see 2-letter P's like this, where I have it highlighted? Well, that's because sometimes you're saying that you looked at a range of pages, or what if you are actually quoting something that was on the bottom of one page and went to the top of the next one? You'd have to say it appears on more than one page, and you do it just like this, from page to page, basically. 2 pages or more, PP. That's going to be the end of the required section. I do have more information in the document. I put it down here because I'm going to anticipate a question. Hey, do we need a reference page? No. Your annotated bibliography is a reference page, actually. It's a reference page with examples, basically. And so this assignment doesn't require students to make a separate reference page, but I bet a lot of you are already being asked to do APA papers in other courses. Maybe you already have and you made some mistakes in them. Maybe you're going to in the future. So I wanted, let's see, why did it say this was wrong? No, I wanted as future tense. Oh, I did make a mistake. See, thank you, Grammarly. The information below here is included so students in courses outside of this class who use APA have access to the information. Again, you're not doing a reference page for this paper, but I put some stuff down here if you're doing it in other classes. So I'm not going to cover that in the video, but it's there for you. And at the very bottom, I have a little bonus material because I stumbled upon it, a nice little visual on the difference between APA and MLA, just so you can see what that looks like. All right, thanks for watching. I know it's not easy.